Okay, so God is continuing to speak at crazy levels of sometimes it doesn't even feel like it's explainable anymore with what God wants to reveal to servant and his son. One thing that it's been apparent is I've been going through this major lust battle. It took a while to come to the place to understand that this word that it is lust. It's not humanness, it's not something we should embrace. I think lust is not part of God's creation. He created Adam and Eve, and that there was harmony between them, and there wasn't this lust to pull them together. And so I've realized about lust, the nature of it is when you give it a little room, it will take a mile. And I don't know how it all works with who's in charge of it, demons and angels, and how it all works in the spirit, because I cannot really see. But what I am aware of is that when you give life to the appetite of this corruption seed in your heart, this desire to be wanted or need to be wanted, it will lead you down paths that are pretty hard to experience the presence and the love of God. And yet God works all good for those who love him. So the thing with God that's so mysterious is that he will continue to allow you to go through these experiences to show you that you need him, that you can't pull yourself out of the ditch, that you're in a hole many times in your lives because of your own passions and desires and unhealed areas of your heart because of where you're at. He is not surprised by this, but one thing he doesn't want is you to remain there. He wants you to remain in him, and he knows that these things are limitations and inferiorities that need to be crucified. And so what I discovered through this experience is that before crucifixion, it has to be revelation of the actual area of crucifixion, and which is something that a lot of us don't have revelation in. So I began to listen to some teaching, and it reminded me that the beginning place of prayer is simply Ephesians, where it says that you may know the Christ, you may know the knowledge of his will. So it's actually not that you can get all your answers fixed and problems eradicated. It's more or less so that you can know Christ himself. And once you know him, then he'll continue to reveal more about him and his plans and his purposes for your life. But not just for you and your life, but for his plan and purposes, and where you fit into the garden and into the puzzle and into the grand plan scheme. And God is revealing a lot on that regard. Now, before you can actually come to know that, which is the beginning stages, I heard in my heart that you got to know your own soul. There's layers that bring deception and deceit upon your life that for some reasons things don't clip and click into your mind and into your heart set, because there's deception that the devil has kept there through hurts and brokennesses through the times. So you can say something to someone for a long time and tell them, this is the advice and hopefully you'll just get over it. Well, truthfully, they won't be able to actually overcome and get over it until that becomes very real to them, until they get it. And that getting it is a work of God. It's, for me, what I experience, it's in my sleep, it's in the night. And God seems to just do it when I'm obedient to basic things like just surrendering up my desire, my right to have some sort of pleasure or sexual ambition or desire. When I'm willing to give it up to God, he is willing to give me his presence and his understanding. But the thing is that he is so holy, and he does want to reveal his power and his holiness to us. But we have to put it in the right perspective, is that it is not something to be taken lightly or tinkered with. It is something very sacred and something very precious that we can't just get and use it and then dispose of it. It's like, Tony, he talked about being sat on by the Lord, and he truthfully experiences these moments with the Lord. So that means there was a heart work going on in his life that God would actually do that. The thing is that he has kind of gone off onto a tangent in his life, and it's sad that we have to see that Tony is like possibly an enemy of this particular ministry when clearly God was working with him. So we're praying for guys like Tony. Now, we got to come back to this place of lust, and God allowing us to go down certain paths for a time. And I began to realize that, yes, there's a seed in my heart of this. Now, my question was, why was this thing hidden, not exposed for so long? I thought that this thing was buried under my own striving or my own discipline, and that God could honor that and that I would never deal with it. Well, the truth is it was there still, and it had never been yet dealt with. And it could be generational, it could be because of things in my past. But the issue is, it's got to go. In order for me to be successful in ministry, have a wife, kids, can't be dealing with this thing. And it's much more easy when you're alone with the Lord dealing with these things instead of being busy and distracting yourself and trying to hear that small voice. So in this time, it's perfect that I would have to go through this, but all of a sudden I went through this massive, it almost felt like all hell was breaking loose in my life with this lust that I almost could not control. It was like I had to give into it. And it almost seemed like the Lord allowed this to happen to see, so that I could see my own heart, so that I could call it, so that I could stop in my heart convincing myself, well, I'm for God fully, but really there's another place in my subconscious that I'm always seeking and yearning and having this mission to find some fulfillment to this lust need in my heart and being wanted. So God needed to expose this. And so right after the ascension time with Ruth when we were in Israel, she said, she's seen it in me that my life I have been seeking reality. And then she said, well, things are going to get a lot more real. Yeah, now it's funny because we think it's going to be all smooth and dandy, but really it's not always that easy. And with the things of God, sometimes you have to go through some major struggles in order for you to see things. And what I've learned in my life that I've had to learn the hard way so many times, like the vision that my feet are bloody. So I've seen this path that I go on, and for some reason, this core of who I am about wanting reality, it doesn't seem to hit me personally when someone just tells me the theory in my head and I know it to present it like a teacher. I have to personally experience it, and it's like that's all I've ever had to go through is difficult experiences of sometimes rebellion and challenges to see, okay, I choose God at the end of it. It didn't satisfy. So with me personally, I had to go through this lusting and this longing, and he showed it to me. He said it's there, and then now I began to say, well, now it's there, it's been there for a reason, so I might as well explore it and see what it's all about. And when I fed into it, it just gave it more life and more cravings and more longings, things that then at that point it got so strong that it's almost like I could not use a rational judgment to shut this thing down. This thing had taken me over, and it was there because something was absent in my heart, and it's love. The love of Christ. I did not trust in it. I maybe trusted in the principle or concept, but not the love of Christ himself. That has to be a work of God, a revelation, a doing of a work, maybe in your sleep or a vision or something that the Lord himself does, and it comes in the perfect times of desperation and surrender when he knows you need it, and then you finally let go and he gives it. And he gives it because of obedience, not because of your perfection. It's your yielding. And so it was there. And so once this thing took so much power of me, I realized, well, it's kind of like that vision when I was in that hole with like Alice in Wonderland and I couldn't get out. And when he started to reveal to me, well, you have to get out of this hole. Well, how am I going to get out of it? He started to pull me out of it, but there were these forces pulling me down, and I was more curious about these forces than actually being delivered, and God wouldn't allow me to be fully delivered until I surrendered up my right to know exactly what these forces were all about, and then I gave into just surrendering completely, wholeheartedly, and somehow that possibly broke the stronghold in my life for that, or revealed it more and more and more. So what I'm saying is that there is a mastery over curiosity that needs to take place in my heart. This is a rotten fruit, a rotten seed. There's been a curiosity ever since I was a kid, and quite possibly the spiritual battle is that the devil has twisted it ever since day one, and he knew that was my thorn, and God allows it to be there because it continues to prove whether I will choose my curiosity over things that are lustful, or I will choose him, which is true love. And when it came down to experiencing this lust, it's even on a psychological level, it's dopamine, a promise of reward. And once you get it, it doesn't fully satisfy. But when you are productive or work hard, you'll get this other thing called serotonin. And so and that's in a healthy way, and you're disciplined and you fulfill a true goal. Now, God, when it came down to it, I experienced both sides, the dopamine or the serotonin, or the lusts of what Satan was doing and in his kingdom as this luring, this kingdom that it looks beautiful with a king and a prince that is Satan. He's trying to lure people into this. He's got this velvet cape on, and it's this gorgeous kingdom. But then it's death. When God's kingdom is like this little humble man riding a donkey and a carpenter. And so we get lured into these things, and when it came down to it, the lure never paid off. It never gave what I was so totally satisfied with. Never gave what I was hoping for. But what did, when God decided that I would pass the test, when I did, I experienced a true presence of the Lord that was like the Lord just sitting on me, just with this presence, could barely move. It's almost like you're drunk in the Spirit. Nothing else matters except for Him and His love, and more revelation comes in. And it beats by a million miles any of this devil's kingdom, any of his learning of sin, which is always temporary payout versus a permanent one. Just like Francis of Loyola, or not Francis, Saint Loyola, this guy that went to the battles and saw that you can experience when he was on his deathbed or whatever, two different kinds of joy and happiness, and one is temporary, and it's when he visioned a girl and the lust that came from it. But when he stopped, he was depressed. But when he continued to dwell upon heavenly things, his life made sense, and that when he finished, he still had the joy for time. So we're learning a lot about lust and how it manifests itself and the purpose of it. And Augustine dealt with it, and he said that it had a lot to do with the fall. And Aquinas said that it was the motivations of corruption or innocence. When you stay in a place of innocence, the things of the flesh, the worldly things, won't have as much influence on you. You won't get caught up into this crazy spider web full of confusion and thoughts. But once you're motivated by a corrupt seed in your heart, it will take you down winding paths. So this revelation has been something I would have never thought, but it was the answer to Ruth's prayer and said things are going to get real. And real came through this difficult experience of all hell breaking loose and Him allowing and watching me. And then when I chose my God, my idol, and then I faced it and I tried to get satisfied with it, and it never paid off. And then I thought, I'll give it up now. And then when I went for it one more time, I realized this is a deep choice. Do I choose God or do I choose this thing, this idol? And it was a moment of breaking point, because I saw that if I kept choosing this idol, it would turn into some sort of massive, overwhelming craving and addiction that I wouldn't be able to break the stronghold. So before that even showed up, I cried out to God, like in that pit, not just, oh, I want a little bit of myself and more of you, God. It's I had to completely give up my right to understand what's going on with this lust and not analyze it or even feed it, but to starve it. So God began to reveal to me to just let go your right to know everything about the lust. Also, when I was sitting with the presence of God after all this experience and the difficulty that I had to go through, it's like I kept hearing words like, it is written, it is already written. You know, I realized that so many people are trying to write books on all these different things, and they may help for a time period, but what only really helps is the Word of God. When God decides to change you, and in my sleep, He taught me about laziness, and I saw in my dream me and trying to justify laziness or wanting to work hard but not working hard. And I realized that temptations come at this place in your life, especially with a young man. We have these bodily functions that go very strongly, and hormones, that working hard and being productive, as it talks about in the beginning where man was supposed to toil with the ground, we have to continue to do that, and that will be an outlet for all these impulses that are going through us. And if you're lazy, you may fall into some traps and feed into the nature as well. So that's another trap. But when I didn't give into it, God was revealing to me a lot more, and I was sitting there and God was saying, it is written, it is written, it is written. And I realized that our whole lives are already written. This is the predestination thing, things that don't make sense, the mystery of like why I chose this path and why I didn't, and can I escape from God's path already, that even though He already purchased me. He already purchased my life, and I'm His workmanship from the cross forward. It just seems like I may choose my own way for a time period, but when it comes down to it, I will continue to come back on His path as I just yield to Him, and He will get His glory out of me. He will get His job done through my life. It is written, my life in heaven. And if we ever need understanding advice, our lives will correlate with people in the Bible, like Paul and David, and right now I don't need another book. I just see that my life has been written already, and it's Romans 7 and 8, and the struggle that Paul says, I do not do what I want to do, and I want to do what I do not do. I am struggling with the same thing. And then he says, but glory to God. And so I feel that too. I felt this morning that when I was lying there, that it's like, even though I'm a sinner and I just have no chance, there's nothing I can do, there's nowhere I can can't turn to myself, can't turn to the world. And sometimes it's like we have trouble turning to God because he's so holy and we're such a sinner, just kind of like Isaiah in 6 says, who am I, God, who am I? And he says, but send me. And it's that whole experience of knowing who God is, and yet God is saying, if you just yield to me, I will make your laugh.